We were in negotiations.
Investing in real estate.
They're winning, they're making money.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Real Estate Educators Podcast, where we provide the education you could build on. I am your host, Kevin Amolsch. Now, this podcast is different than anything I've seen or done because we don't only focus on real estate investors and investments, but on the content creation behind that. We want to help real estate investors and real estate influencers make more money. Now, if you like what you hear, or maybe even if you don't, do me a favor, trying to grow the channel, follow us, give me a 5-star review, and share it with a friend. Speaking of friends, I have one with me today. Mike, I am so thrilled to have you on. You don't know this, but you are one of my idols, like one of the people I really do look up to. So I cherish our relationship, even though we don't get the chance to see each other and interact all that often. But you've been doing this thing for 20 years, about the same time as me, but your career's taken a totally different path, hundreds and hundreds of investments, mostly down in Colorado Springs, huge portfolio, lots of free and clear properties, lots of cash flow, an amazing life. I want to hear more about it. How you doing?
I'm fantastic. Thanks for the intro.
So usually, I know I did a little intro there for you on your behalf there, but usually we'd like to ask the guests to tell us a little bit about themselves. So take me back before real estate investing. So maybe 21-ish years ago, and tell me how you got going.
Well, I mean, to go way back, I have a business degree. That's kind of where I started in college. It took me a long road to get there. Kind of self-paid as I went. I mean, the good news was I didn't incur any student loan debt till the very end. But it took me like 9 years to get my bachelor degree because I was kind of in and out. So, in 97, I graduated. And my first goal after getting a career path started was I wanted to move out west. Another college buddy of mine had taken me out to the Rockies, and I just kind of fell in love with the West. And so that was goal number one, was getting to Colorado. Once I got here, I was kind of a business degree, but I was riding the kind of the IT consulting salary wave until that crashed. And I always kind of had the bug, just due to a guy good friend of mine I've known since third grade. He started buying, his dad started buying properties, when we were in high school, and I kind of saw that. And then Sean started buying properties and holding stuff as, kind of a side gig. And that was just going to kind of be my path. I was going to do my IT job. I was going to, make money doing that. And then I was going to buy some rentals and hold them as a part of my, my long-term retirement goals. And kind of after the salary wave crashed in IT and all these jobs were getting outsourced to, other countries. And I was like, I was scared. I'm in Colorado Springs. We're a military town, lots of military contractors, but I don't have a military background. I did not have security clearance. And I thought a lot of the people that were going to get laid off where I worked, like the first people picked were going to be the ones that had security clearance, which I didn't. So I kind of started looking at real estate more as something more than just a retirement vehicle, but as a business model. And I floundered around at first. I started going to back in the day, Bill Bronchick ran the Colorado Association of Real Estate Investors, and I think that was a huge blessing to me, because Bill, if anything, he's really, really good at explaining the legal side of it and doing it in a way where somebody like me can understand it, from the legal standpoint, like how the liens, the mortgages, the deeds of trust, like, all these creative real estate structures work. That was hugely beneficial to me. And that was definitely something that I clung to, and, started buying his courses, other courses, going to seminars, and it just kind of took off from there. And, yeah, it's been in 2003. I was ready to quit my job, but we were on our insurance, and we were pregnant. My wife was pregnant with our son Josh, so I had to ride it out until he was born in 2004. And I didn't know it, but I had FMLA, so I had like 3 months, or maybe it was 2 months. I don't know. I had a month or two to basically get paid see if I could make this real estate thing work as a full-time venture. And it was great. I during that little vacation, I went to a couple of marketing seminars, and I went from, kind of a 1 to 2 deals a month to 3 to 4 deals a month, and then was able to just kind of pick up the pace over time. And the more I learned about marketing, and the better I got at sales, and like finding the opportunities I was really hunting for, it took off. And then my wife terrified the crap out of me a year later and decided she was going to quit her job. So there was no more regular paycheck. But it was ultimately it was a blessing to have my wife in it with me. Was a fantastic thing to go through. And maybe my son will be interested. I don't know. I think he's enjoyed some of the benefits. So
I'm sure he has.
We'll see where he ends up.
Yeah, because you guys live a pretty amazing life. I see that on Facebook and some of the things you're out there doing and playing and having a ball. And not everyone can work with their wife, so that's pretty cool too.
Yeah, we tried to stay out of each other's way. We had our individual roles, and I did my part, she did her part, and neither one of us take constructive criticism from each other very well. We've had to work on that. But we've done well. Like we knew the destination. We didn't micromanage the route, so to say.
So you said FMLA. I probably should know what that means, but I don't. So what is that?
Family medical leave, something or another. It was a benefit from my corporate job, where basically it just said you could take a leave of absence after you have a child, and you could basically have I just thought I could take the time. I didn't know I was actually going to still get my paycheck. So that was a better bonus, but I was going to take the time just so I didn't have to necessarily burn the bridge and quit. But I kind of spaced it, and I didn't realize my time was up. So I kind of had to go back to work for a few days and give my notice. So
you come back from your leave.
Oh, it was
and gave your notice.
Totally sucked to have to go back to work.
I did.
But I didn't want to be a total jerk and like just not show up without any notice. So
yeah, but that was probably a tough conversation, right? Because you're just getting back from not being at work.
I politely, and I had a couple of good bosses. I had a local boss, and then I had like kind of a career path boss in Kansas City, and I got along with both of them. But I politely told them their services as my manager were no longer required.
Is that how you said it?
I did. I basically fired them.
That's
politely.
They probably got a kick out of that too.
They did. Actually, my boss reached out to me later and asked me for some real estate advice at one point. And actually, several people that I worked with have asked me over the years on real estate advice.
Oh, I'm sure that's true. I talk to a lot of investors, as you know, and I get interviewed on a lot of podcasts, and the question always comes up, like, how'd you get going? Like, what'd you read? What are the books and all of that? And Rich Dad Poor Dad always comes up, right? I mean, that's kind of the staple. You had your own like real life Rich Dad, sounds like Sean's dad, huh?
I did. I mean, like, it would have been a different book, but I mean, it was very similar. My mom and dad both had regular jobs, and then my friend Sean, who was funny, he was like the kind of the typical C student, really smart, but didn't, school wasn't where he thrived. And he basically struggled to get through university. Like, he didn't get the full business degree. He got a little lower degree, but he was also bought a business right out of college. Like, he was always good with his money. His dad was a business guy, no college, started a carpet cleaning business, started a carpet sales business. He'd build them up, sell them off, build them up, sell them off. And then he started doing real estate. And, I was too young to really understand the mechanics of it, but I could see it. And I'm like, the gears started turning. And then I had a couple other college buddies. And like at one point, one of my friends lived in a rental that his dad owned, and it just, you start seeing these examples over time. Sorry,
that's all right.
Bashing into my desk here. So those seeds were planted, but I would say Sean and Sean's dad were definitely the early influences that really planted the seed that started growing for real estate.
Did his dad like help mentor you, or is it just you just learn from just observing?
No, I saw what he was doing. And I guess, and then I saw what Sean was doing. Like Sean started buying, distressed properties, and like the first property he bought was this. I grew up in a little town, small town Ohio, and there were all these little towns, and Wilmington was the place where we all hung out, and not to date ourselves, but we went cruising. That was social.
They still do that,
He bought this little colonial house that was chopped up into 5 units, and as he would get a vacancy, he would go in and sweat equity, renovated it, and raise the rent slowly over time. And he had that thing paid off in like 5 years. And then he bought some. I think Sean was always like a fantastic negotiator and completely indifferent, but like his next property at least the one I remember, was a duplex that he bought from a doctor, and it was distressed, probably bad tenants, and it was a train wreck. I saw it after Sean had kind of gutted it, and but he didn't care. He was either going to buy it at the right price or not buy it, and he was always patient, and he just kind of rinsed and repeated. He bought a fire damaged house, I remember, at one point, and he would just chug it along, and he's done quite well. He still owns a crap ton of real estate in Ohio, and we occasionally catch up and compare notes. But,
I was going to ask if you guys are still in touch, if you still talk to him or his dad.
Oh yeah, not his dad as much, but definitely keep touch with him pretty, as regular as you get when you're, this age.
Yeah, you got a family, a wife, and some kids, and he's probably in a similar situation. I can understand that. So tell us about your first deal. Like now you saw Sean, you're excited about it. You saw Sean's dad, you're getting excited about business, and you wanted to invest. Not a business. You didn't want it to turn into a business yet.
Yeah.
You wanted to just invest for a return. So tell us about that.
My first deal really was a house hack. I mean, that was kind of before we even called it that. It was like, how can I afford to get in the game? So I used an FHA loan. I had visions of being Sean's dad and buying a foreclosure and fixing it up, and then I realized, when am I going to do this with a full-time job? And I wasn't, I didn't understand like what you guys did. I didn't know what a hard money lender was and all that back in that time frame. So I looked at a lot of foreclosures, and I ended up buying just a move-in property. I used an FHA loan. I had a roommate, had roommates, because I didn't take a course on that. But anyway, I had a little house. It had a separate basement entrance, and that worked well. And my plan at that point was, at some point, I bought my first property. I was going to save up and get my next property and just kind of move, laterally, not move up in value, but find good houses, good areas that I could rent to cover the costs. And that was kind of my plan over, I kind of had this vision of 12 for whatever reason. Like I knew I could get up to 10 loans at that time. And by the time I got to the later ones, I was thinking I could pay off the earlier ones. So I could get up to maybe 12. And, that seemed like enough rent that would equate to my corporate salary. And that was my big scientific plan back there. The second one was, I met my wife, and we rented out my house and we bought a new one for us. So that was house number 2. House number 3 was, okay, I got the crappy little dot matrix printer business card that says Mike's a real estate investor now. And started going to, I went to seminars, and I bought a triplex, which taught me a lesson in property management, or my lack thereof. But that was we learned a lot on that property. That property got us into the next little HUD house that we bought, and then another HUD house after that. And we were kind of doing BRRRs effectively, is what, we didn't have that lingo back then too, but you bought it, you fix it up, and then, you put a permanent loan on it. And I've gotten rid of that triplex. I still have house number 2 and house number 3. Still have them. They're good
That's
houses.
crazy.
Still
That's
have the
cool.
first house I bought to live in. They're good assets. They keep paying us, anyway, eventually I learned wholesaling and fix and flipping. And okay, I didn't learn fix and flipping. I learned to buy and wholesale and wholetail. And then when my wife joined me, and especially after we got into the recession, my wife really dialed in the actual construction management and the fix and flip process. And she built a hell of a machine there. Like, we had probably 15 to 20 fix and flips in the pipeline at times when we scaled up. And it was amazing to see that happen. Like, I was just like, okay, if I can buy more, you can handle it. Okay. So
Yeah, I remember you telling me that. So our stories are rather similar. My first one was at FHA also.
okay.
And then 2001, right before 9/11. And then, well, earlier in that year, and then I moved out of it and kept it. And I had roommates. And I did the whole thing just like you did. And that's pretty crazy that's how we got going. I never really got into the fix and flips like you did. Managing contractors was challenging for me. Sounds like maybe for you too, but then your wife took it over.
I
So how did
wouldn't have done it. I mean, honestly, I'd have just been a wholesaler and a wholetailer, because I love the thrill of the chase.
Yeah,
And
me too.
for me, I love the challenge of marketing to find the right opportunities and be, the sales process of it, like kind of doing the problem solving with the seller and trying to find the best solution. And, I was only a flipper to, afford my buy and hold habit. Like, it wasn't, I wanted to do one. I had to do one to have, to afford the marketing. Effectively, all my flips generated, earned income. The earned income had the expense of marketing that fueled the acquisition of the buy and holds and the creative finance, which I know you did a lot of as well. So anyway, that worked well. And I would try to hold as many as I possibly could. And anyway, that worked out.
Yeah, what's your because you have held a lot. I can't believe you still have your first couple of houses. I had to liquidate everything when I went through 2008. That like destroyed my portfolio. So that's impressive that you went through that and
Well,
it came out.
2008 was, I mean, what I learned was equity is kind of irrelevant, and cash flow is kind of what keeps you alive. I had 78 houses in 2008, and they all lost 20-25% by the end of 2008. And we couldn't sell them. I mean, the majority of them, we couldn't sell them and break even. So it was, brace yourself, dig your nails in and hang on. And, we did well. My wife, managed the rental portfolio with one assistant. And, ultimately it was kind of funny. I had this bizarre moment. I was down in Phoenix, in Scottsdale, hiking Camelback Mountain with a friend. And I'll never forget this moment because it was just kind of one of those gut reactions. He's like, we were in a mastermind at one point together, and I was down there for a seminar, and we ended up just hanging out and doing some hiking. And he's like, he knew how many houses I had. And I think we're probably around 2010 at this point. So, we kind of settled in to the recession. And we were fixing and flipping a lot of stuff. But he's like, hey, had you thought about what's your net worth right now? And just knee-jerk reaction, I just said, probably nothing. And we had all these assets, 78 houses, and probably the equity was still break even, after a couple of years. And I mean, our values really just kind of bounced along the bottom for probably till around 2012. We started seeing the uptick again. But by still having those houses and having those loans were that much older, the loans had paid down. And then when the market started upticking, we just had this huge point of leverage that we had all these assets. Like if you had, any assets in Denver or the Front Range, and, in 2012, like the ride from 2000, the last 11 years has just been like astronomical. And, rents were pretty stagnant during the down market, and then they started going up, and I'm not saying it wasn't I mean, it was incredibly stressful, but a lot of lessons learned, because it's not the equity that really mattered. It was the cash flow to support the assets, and eventually, the assets start working for you. For a while you work to acquire the assets, and you do what you can to, you maintain them, you keep them well, you learn management as best as you can to pick the right tenants for your properties. And ultimately, at some point, that right now that the properties are doing all the hard work for us at this point. Like, they do everything. The rent, some houses made enough equity through loan amortization and growth to pay off other houses, and now we need, at one point, I think it was somewhere between 135 and 155 houses we had under the full tent, between what we managed, what I had in my IRA, and another partnership I created with another student. I mean, I hesitate to even call him a student. Yes, he was a student of mine, but he's a very good investor on his own right, and I just happened to catch him at the start of that ride. But he was good at the business. We built a whole my wife told me at one point, after I think about 102 houses, she's like, "You're done. I don't want any more."
Remember you telling me that?
I don't want to scale it. So, deal junkie here is like, well, how can I? So I started figuring out how to do these creative deals with my IRA, and then assign them to people that were good managers. They would basically own it. My IRA would have a lien for an equity position in the property. And then when I deployed all my IRA money, then I said, okay, now what? So then I created a partnership with somebody, and we built up another 32, 33 houses in that partnership. And
crazy. So you're still at it.
That partnership we've dissolved. He took his profits, I took my profits. We paid off our own portfolio assets. The IRA stuff, I've had some turn, and I mean, mostly now I'm a passive investor. I like to, via ideas and training, complicate the lives of the younger folks that are trying to grow their portfolios. And
they have the energy.
Occasionally involve myself or my IRA in one of the transactions if they need some capital. But I try to teach people how to do it on their own. Yeah. Anyway, it's been a fun ride. And I'm still a recovering deal junkie. Like I still struggle. That I love the thrill of the chase and the negotiations and all that stuff. And I do miss the regularity of how operations used to be.
Yeah, and just building those systems and everything. I know you really enjoy that. I would love to go into some case studies and some deals, but I'm not sure we're going to have the time on this one for that. I want to get into the education side because you're so good at that. And you even mentioned your student and how you've created this partnership, and you had over 30 houses with this one student. So he wouldn't have came to you. You wouldn't have met if you weren't training other investors. So tell us a little bit about the training side of your career.
I had, just somebody, and I would call him a mentor, but it was basically just, but a lot of people I would say are mentors, or just books or courses I've taken, and I may not have ever really met them personally, but they had an impact on me. And one of those mentors, said, if you ever get the opportunity to teach, you should, because you will learn so much more by teaching it to others. And I would say that proved to me, that proved incredibly beneficial. I had to learn how to articulate what I was doing to others so they could replicate it. And, you have to ask yourself, why do I do that? Like, have you ever heard the Zig Ziglar story where he's talking about the woman who cut the ends of the ham off, and then she taught her daughter to cut the ends of the ham off. And at some point, somebody's like, why do you cut the ends of the ham off? Like, well, that's what my mom taught me to do. And, well, Mom, why did you do that? Well, that's what your grandma taught me to do. Well, Grandma, why did you do that? Well, I only had a pan this big.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
you know what I mean? Like they just did it because, that's what they learned. But why do you do those things is kind of important. And, ultimately I got asked to speak at the real estate association that I learned from. And it was awesome. And I got to go there and they're like, hey, Mike, you're doing really good at wholesaling and subject to, would you come talk on those two topics at a night meeting? So I went and, I learned from a marketing standpoint, get their attention first. So I had all these copies of checks that I've gotten from wholesaling. So I asked for a volunteer and I got the volunteer up front. And, and I said, do you want to read these out for the crowd? And like I had photocopies of all these checks and they just start reading and reading and reading. It was like, okay, I got their attention. So we didn't really cover subject to, we just ended up spending the whole night talking about wholesaling. And I got mobbed after that with people like, hey, I didn't have a course. I didn't do anything. I wasn't there to try to sell anybody on anything other than this is real. This business is real if you treat it like a business. And I kind of got mobbed. And I had several people that like, will you mentor me? Will you mentor me? And I'm like, okay, is the world trying to tell me something? So that's how it started. And I said, okay. So I just had the first group of people come to my house. I mentored them around my dining room table and I created the course as we went along, from, okay, here's where we're all going to start, everybody. And this is what I need you to do for homework this week. And anyway, it went, I kind of did a whole mentoring program. I think that was around 2005, all the way to probably at least 2010, 2011, and then at that point, the fix and flips were going crazy. The education was going crazy. And I was going crazy as a result. Like I wasn't doing either at my full potential. So I wanted to focus on our family business, which is our real estate. And it was tough, like, cause I really love teaching. And that eventually led to a meetup group because then I'm like, okay, when I'm there, but I don't have to, I don't have to be there. Like I have a good friend down here who helps me run the meetup. So when I'm on trips and doing what I need to do, it still goes on without me. And then when I'm there, I can be involved. And I still like to train. I don't charge anybody. It's free. Just show up. Like, I mean, and by the way, hats off to you for like actually being very incredibly organized and doing the big conferences that you do every year. Like that takes a heck of a lot of effort to pull those off and you make it look easy. And anyway,
I don't do it.
See, that's why you're good at what you do because you can delegate. I'm not good at that.
Was that association? Was that Carrie?
Mm-hmm.
So that was Bill Bronchick's. It's crazy because that's how I got started too. So I bet you we crossed paths at some point. Didn't even
Probably.
I probably saw that presentation. I might have been one of the guys mobbing you. Who knows? The Real Estate Educators Podcast is brought to you by Pine Financial Group. Pine Financial Group is a private lender specializing in value-add bridge lending for real estate investors. This is accomplished by raising private money from individual investors and lending that money out in short-term real estate loans. Pine operates one of the coolest public mortgage funds on the market because it brings consistency and security to your investment portfolio without giving up on returns. The fund pays its investors a flat 8% return with monthly distributions. There is a low minimum investment and no lockup period. That's right. You can request all of your money back at any time without any fees. Diversify your portfolio out of Wall Street and into Main Street with the Pine Financial Group Public Fund PFG Fund 5. Find out more at pinefinancialgroup.com. That's pinefinancialgroup.com. So you did the mentorship. Now you start your meetup. So this is open to anybody?
Yeah.
So it's down in Colorado Springs. Where do we get more information on that, or what's it called?
It's just the acronym for Colorado Springs Real Estate Investing Club. CSREIC.com will take you right to our meetup page. It's free to join. It used to be just local people. That was it. But we've got almost 3,000 people on there. And during COVID shut down all the live meetings. So we went to Zoom, and now we have people from, all over the US that join our Zooms every Tuesday morning on Zoom. Then Thursdays we do a live one at an actual coffee shop where we can kind of get around. We get different people. Some are crossovers, but It's fun. It's not, nothing sold, nothing. It's just open Q&A. What's going on? What do you need help with? And it was really cool. Like the other day, like, just yesterday was Thursday, and we had a little young 18-year-old young man showed up, and he's like, I want to do this. What can I do? He's like, anything you need done. And anyway, he got a lot of great advice. And
Oh, I love
it's
that.
like, God, I wish I had, mm, had this at 18,
Can you imagine? Yeah. I was pretty young. I was 21.
I know you were crazy young, like doing all like tons of deals at 21.
Yeah.
That's so awesome.
It was a fun ride, but I was so overly aggressive. So we talked about a little bit about 2008, but man, you said lessons. There's no question about that. Those are one of those things you learn from experience, and we'll never see a time like that again. I don't think, but you had really the perfect storm in 10, 11, 12, like you were describing, right? I mean, I bet you really beefed up your portfolio in that time.
I would say 8, like 9 and 10 were, kind of disaster mitigation, like,
yeah, that's fair.
Like I didn't buy and hold much in 9 and 10. It was more like, keeping a grip on the houses that we had. 11, I started doing some marketing again, and started doing buy and hold deals again. 2012, I joined a mastermind group, and we kind of had, like, because we had all these houses, we had a crap ton of depreciation. So that depreciation carried over to our S corp, where we did all our flipping, and we could, we had our flip volume here to basically maximize, we had normal business deductions, then we had our depreciation, and we maximize our fix and flips to basically come in underneath that depreciation threshold. So we did 20 or so fix and flips a year. Everything else I just wholesaled off. And we were in the zero tax bracket because the depreciation was so large that it just offset all those gains, and it was fantastic, because right around that time frame I could take my old corporate IRA traditional and I rolled it over to a Roth, and because I was in the zero tax bracket, I didn't have to pay the tax to convert to Roth. So around 2011, I started buying again, and Lori's like, I've got 102, you're done. So then I started doing the Roth IRA stuff, and I would like one little case study. Found a little house in Security Widefield, little 3-bedroom, 1-bath, detached garage. I found it, negotiated it to buy it subject to. They needed $2,000 moving money. My IRA went to contract. My IRA put up to $2,000, and then I assigned it to a friend of mine, Russ, and Russ owned the property. And it just came with a lien from my IRA. And I don't know, maybe 7 years later, we sold the house, and my IRA got paid back $70,000. So my 2,000, it turned into $70,000 and went directly into my Roth IRA.
And you didn't have any effort. Like, you found the deal, so there's no effort. But
I mean,
once you structured it, was hands off, though.
Correct. Yeah, I didn't. I just put the deal together and assigned it effectively with a lien. And then anyway, that model worked well. So I did quite a few of those where I just involved, like, actually the next one, Russ brought me a deal. So he found it, and then I put the money in, and I did quite a few with him, and then I kind of vetted a few other investors, and then anyway, most of those have run their course, and I've had another local investors I've done some deals with, and some of those are still active, some have run their course, and some of that I've kind of put back into like some commercial assets at this point. Just it honestly, it's been a hot market. It's been harder to find creative finance deals, but they're still there, just not the volume that we had at the recession. Like, it was just like fish in a barrel.
Yeah, that was amazing. I was hurt starting in 2007. So by the time 10 came around, I was ready to buy. So we started buying in 10. And man, I never see that again.
You seem to have recovered well.
I did okay. I did okay. Yeah. What do you think? I keep hearing people tell me the recession's here, the recession's coming, it's going to be worse in '08. Uh, Obviously, I don't agree with that, but what do you think when you hear that?
In 2006, I went to a seminar by Jack Miller and John Schaub, and it was called the Subprime Meltdown. And I want you to keep in mind this was October 2006. The subprime meltdown had not happened.
Oh, okay.
So I got a hell of a warning and a playbook, and I was still kind of like, everybody knew back then what was going on in Florida and the coastal towns and like Southern California, Florida, like it was booming. And, I was like, we just had about 5% appreciation a year. We were just kind of oozing along, nothing crazy. And I'm like, I don't think it's going to be that bad here. And I was way wrong. So in 2018, I paused. I really slowed things down. I turned off marketing. And I just, at one point, like marketing was our biggest expense. And I trimmed that. And by trimming that, you don't need to do fix and flips. You don't need to do this. So we've just kind of been in management mode. But what happened in 2020? I was at a mastermind group in San Diego or La Jolla right when COVID was happening. And we literally were not sure we were going to be able to book a flight and get out of there. And the whole topic of the mastermind went immediately to disaster recovery. Like, how do we cut costs? How do we do this? How do we blah, blah, blah? And by the way, is anybody going to get a rental car so we can drive home somehow? Like that, it was that crazy. And what happened? It was like 2 weeks of panic. And then the best thing that ever happened to real estate, if you owned real estate, it was just like, this doesn't make any sense. And if the only point I'm trying to make is, who knows? Are we going to have a recession? Maybe. Or is it going to be a real estate recession? Maybe. I don't know. Clearly we're seeing there's some significant problems with office real estate and debt, commercial debt that has a reset. This is going to be a problem. Is it going to be a problem that filters down to enough bank? Like what happened in '08 was the stock market tanked because of the volume of subprime loans that were securitized and sold off. And it basically took down the major investment banks and therefore created not only a massive recession, but a real estate recession. And there's a huge difference between a recession in the market and a real estate recession. The last real estate recession was what? The S&L crisis, which I lived through, but I don't have any recollection of that. I wasn't in business. I was like a teenager. So we will have it again. I'm certain of it. Is it going to be this one? I don't know. Brace yourself. Be prepared, and don't be overly optimistic like I was in 2008. Just because you haven't and the problem is a lot of you and I have the scars, but if you go on YouTube or you go on a lot of these quote educators, none of them out there that are big names, they're teaching people, how many have actually been through a 2008? Very few. So be careful who you get advice from is all I'm saying, and be prepared for the worst. But be okay if things keep going. Where I think the lessons I learned were short-term debt is bad. Because if you what's going to take down office buildings? It's not the fact that it's rented, it's not rented. It's when a loan comes due and there's a reset and the bank won't give you a new loan. Because by their definition, in the middle of this recession, the best buy opportunity possible, high FICO, didn't matter your credit situation, didn't matter your reserves, they weren't lending on it. So you had to do alternative financing to acquire assets, and that's not going to exist in the commercial space. So I don't know. It'll be interesting. I think if it filters down to the residential world, I will probably not complicate my wife's life, but I will probably be blow the dust off and go do some deals and find some other partners that I can,
You can't resist, can you?
Yeah, I know, I'm joking.
All right. So our listeners are both real estate investors and influencers. So a lot of times they'll listen just to get some advice, like how do I start a podcast? How do I start a meetup? What should I be doing? So what piece of advice here before we close out would you give someone who wants to start a group like you've done?
Just start, with the goal of providing value. Like somebody was at mine the other day, and they're trying to create some networking meetings. And I said, you sent me an email for your networking event. I said, and I promptly said, I'll get back to that. And I forgot about it. I said, just be efficient, spend $90, get on Meetup. It will automatically remind everybody multiple times that you've got a meeting. It's a place that you can delegate without having an employee. And just start with the goal of providing value to build your network. If you don't even get into the education space, but you build your network, that's the important thing. When I'm not talking about real estate, I'm wildly introverted. And, me running the group was an introvert's way of, if I'm in the front, people will meet me, whether I'm able to go start up a conversation with a stranger or not. Something I'll say by teaching will resonate. And that's ultimately by teaching, by being a person who hosted a networking group. That's where I got private lenders. That's where I got deal partners. That's where, whatever thing I needed at that time in my business, I taught about it or showed examples. And when I needed private money, I talked about how we use private money in our business. I mean, it's simple as that. And invariably, there'd be a line at the end of the meeting when it's all over, and there's always the people who are like, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Hey, Mike, I got a couple of bucks. Could you use it? And I'm like, let me see if I can get you on the roster. We'll see. So it's, be a person of value, be a person of integrity, teach with your heart, and give first. It's like anything. Don't be prepared to I'm going to start a meetup group and I'm going to get millions of dollars for the private capital. You're going to have to give and give and give and give and give and help other people. But ultimately, the long run it's just like the low equity houses I bought subject to. There wasn't much meat on the bone when I bought them, but over years, that's why I was able to retire in my 40s, because of, the nurturing. You nurture it along long enough, it'll take care of you. And at a meeting, a networking group is like that. You nurture it, you help other people, and ultimately it'll run its course and it'll take care of you in ways you won't even realize now.
So many fantastic nuggets in there. I love the introvert comment because I'm the same way, and I found it far easier. I started with Toastmasters and just trying to get comfortable in front of a room and then get in front of the room. And it's much easier to network when everyone knows you already. Mm-hmm. I love that. I love the giving back and providing value first and give. I found the exact same. In fact, Mike, when I was starting Pine, this was in 2008, I was desperate for money. I was losing everything, right? I was so focused on the commission and the points I was charging and just closing deals. I was focused on me, and it was a tough go. Once I could figure out to shift that focus, how do I help my client make money? And I started helping people make money. I started making a lot more money. So there's something really true about focusing on your client, your student, for sure. Great nuggets.
It's Zig Ziglar. I mean, the quote that drove my business, and I mean, it's not just me. It's you can get anything in life you want if you help enough other people get what they want.
You're not the first to say that. It's so
the
true.
Best business quote of all time, and it's your customer is first. Who you serve comes. You have to solve their business problem, and by doing that, by solving their problems, you'll be taken care of. I mean, ultimately,
100% agree. And creating that community. So speaking of serve, how can we serve you, man? What do you need?
Dude, I mean, you can come to my meetup if you want. I'd like if you let me help you build your business, that will make my day. I like to live vicariously through other people. At some point I did kind of realize, like, to quote Pete Fortunato, he's like, when you have enough, stop. You know, like, ultimately me buying more real estate and, I still do deals, but I don't do it where we buy and manage it ourselves. That's just going to complicate my life and add more stuff that I don't need to do. It's going to be less trips with my wife, less trips with my son. It's more about, freedom at this point. Less is more has been my mantra pretty much since 2018. But anyway, I plugged the meetup group. You're welcome to join. There's no cost. Come prepared, ask good questions, and ultimately those questions will not only serve you, but they'll serve the other folks on the group. And
all right, we'll try to get a link up. So we'll post this on YouTube and wherever, Apple and all that. So we'll try to put in the show notes your link to your meetup. If they want to reach you, are you open to that?
Sure. I mean, email mike@swiftresults.com is best. If I'm not in town, I don't expect an immediate response, but if I'm around, I'll get to you.
Sounds great. Well, I so appreciate you coming on and sharing your story. It's so similar to mine. So it's fun to hear. It's like everyone has their own trials and tribulations or whatever. And you made it, man. And you're doing great things out there. And I really appreciate you coming on.
No worries. Anytime, man.
All right. Have a good one.
Take care.
Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. If you did, please be sure to follow and leave us a review. Oh yeah, and tell a friend.